Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel, Numbers with Nora. This is a math tutoring channel that helps you with all your math needs. For this specific video, we're going to be starting statistics. This is just a basic course on statistics. Usually, this is a course when you're in college and you're taking your first statistics class. We're going to start with chapter 1 from the very beginning, and we're going to do lesson 1.1, Introduction to Practice of Statistics. The book I'm going to be using is going to be this one. It's called Statistics by Michael Sullivan, the 3rd edition. Here's the serial number and everything. If you guys would like to buy it or buy a hard copy or online, you're able to follow along. But if you're using any other basic statistics book, it should cover everything in there as well. Okay. If you need more information on where to buy the book, leave a comments or leave something in the comments, and I'll tell you where to buy it for a good price or where you can get it used. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So with chapter 1, we're going to do mostly vocabulary. Like I say in all my math videos, when it comes to mathematics, vocabulary is key. Okay. It's very, very important to know your vocabulary before you start any kind of math. All right. So let's go in and jump into the vocabulary. So the first one is going to be statistics. All right. And statistics is just the science of collecting, organizing, summarizing, and analyzing information to draw conclusions or to answer questions. Okay. And usually when we refer to data in statistics, data is just going to equal information. All right. So next, let's go on and do population. You can find all these definitions in the book as well. So in statistics, when they refer to a population, it's going to refer to an entire group. Okay. Going to reach out to be selected. So that means your whole, like everything, all right? It means all, okay? So it's an entire group. And then when we're referring to individuals, that's just going to be a person or object. That is a member of the population. All right. Being studied. Right. So it's just going to be like one of your data points or something like that. Right. A specific individual or one of your data points, I guess, is how we can look at that. Then we have sample. Sample is going to be the subject of the population. We're going to look at examples after we write down all these vocab words. So it's going to be a subject of the population that is being studied. Okay. So for example, if I say, like, I'm looking at all the people in the United States, but all the people in the United States of a certain range of like only 5,000 people in the United States, that 5,000 is going to be my sample, okay, of my population. Right. Next one is going to be statistic. Right. So statistic is just a numerical summary of a sample. So, for example, you say the statistic is 78% of women in the United States usually wear jeans. Okay, that 78% is going to be a statistic. Okay, because it's a numerical summary of my sample. So we have descriptive statistic. So this one describes data through numerical summaries. Numerical summaries. All right. So usually that's going to have to deal with numbers, okay, in your statistic. And then usually they don't only have to be summaries. So summaries can be tables or graphs, and it's based on a sample, okay? So this one that's important. This is based on a sample, okay? Based on a sample. So that's important to know about this one. It's based on a sample, and it doesn't make any general conclusions about the population. So descriptive statistics are just a numerical summary based on your sample, not your whole population. Okay. So next, let's do inferential statistic. Inferential statistic is going to be used. This one is going to be used as a method that takes a result from a sample. So this uses a method that takes a result from a sample. Okay. And it extends it into the population. Into the population. Okay. So basically, it's like we want to do further analysis. So when we do analysis on a sample, we want to sit there and basically do further analysis and see how it's going to look on the whole population, right? So that's what that basically means, right? And it includes the levels of confidence. And it's also a goal to use statistics to estimate parameters, okay? So whenever you hear like something's in a certain parameter or it's having to do with the whole population, then you're going to look at inferential. Descriptive statistics, it has to do with sample, okay? Like I said, we're getting ready to do examples on these, so it will make better sense, right? And so then we're going to have the parameter. It's going to be a numerical summary of a population. Okay. So remember a sample, or remember a statistic is just a numerical summary of our sample. A parameter is just a numerical summary of our population. Okay. Then we're also going to have variables. Variables are characteristics of the individuals within the population. Six of the individuals within the population. Okay. And we're, like I said, we're going to see what that looks like in a chart of data. Okay. Then we have qualitative variables. Qualitative variables are going to basically allow classifications of individuals based on some attribute or characteristic. Okay. So we'll put classification of individuals based on some attribute or characteristic. Okay. All right. So that's basically going to be like characteristics like, okay, hair color or t-shirt size or even zip code. Those are all qualitative variables, okay? Because they're not as much numerical. Oops, just a second. All right. Then we're going to have quantitative. Now, quantitative is going to be a numerical. Oops, let me change my font size. It's going to be a numerical measure of individuals. Okay, so usually that's going to be like temperature, or another one could be like age range or something like that, right? And then we have different kind of quantitative variables. So discrete, that's going to be more of like a finite number you can count. So discrete is a quantitative variable that has either a finite. When I mean finite, that means it has an end, okay? Countable and has an end, okay? Number of possible values. All right, and what I mean by that, I'll kind of draw this one out. Like any like set of numbers or set of data points that you're able to count, like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Let's say I have a data set. It's 1, 2, 3, and let's say this data set goes all the way out to like 25. Okay, that means my data set is finite, so I have a finite number of variables. All right, but the only thing about this with discrete quantitative variables is that um, you can't take on every possible value between any possible value. So, for example, even though I have whole numbers right here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 25, there's also numbers in between 1 and 2, like 1/2, right? All these decimals or fraction numbers or ratios in between are whole numbers. I'm not counting those. So when we say discrete, we're not considering those numbers that can be in between my whole numbers or in between them. Okay. So that's going to come up in one of our examples that we're going to do later. Okay. All right. So then we have continuous. So continuous is a quantitative variable. A quantitative variable that has a infinite. Remember, in math, infinite means like it has no end. Okay, make this font the correct font. All right, so a quantitative variable that has an infinite number of possible values. There's an infinite number of possible values that are not countable. Okay. So for continuous quantitative variables, it may take on every possible value between any two numbers. And often in statistics, we round these variables, okay? So my example up here with the fractions that can be in between whole numbers, it can sit there and take on those numbers in between, okay? And we'll sit there and look at more examples about how to define a continuous data set or a continuous quantitative variable. Right? So these are our vocab words, okay? Like I said, I always like to sit there and start from the beginning and have all my vocab words listed. So when I'm doing my homework or anything, I can sit there and relate back to, or I can relate back to them. Okay. So some other important things to remember is they do have the process of statistics. So when you're doing statistics, it's almost like a science experiment, and you want to sit there and get the answer to something, and you want to sit there and say how accurate your answer is. So the steps that we take are these 4 steps right here. The first step is to identify the research object. So you want to sit there and know exactly what your question is, what question you're trying to answer, and what you're trying to study. The second one is to collect data that's needed to answer that question. So once you post the question, you need to collect certain data and variables that you need to sit there and help you answer this question. The third step is to describe the data. Basically, what are your variables in the data? Are they quantitative? Are they qualitative variables? Is it a sample or a population that you're sitting there varying? So you want to sit there and kind of define your data and know all your variables in your data. And then the last step is to perform the influence, right? And basically, performing the influence is when you sit there and do your analysis in the real statistics part, and you're able to sit there and see how accurate your answer is after you sit there and find your answer. All right. So these are going to be later on in the chapter. Okay. Then we have another important thing that they bring up. It's determining the level of measure of a variable. These are important as well and should be in your notes. So get ready to write again. So I kind of like to look at these as like a tier. Like this is like the first level, second level, third level, and fourth level. All right. So let's go ahead and write down the definition of these. So a nominal level of measure is if values of a variable name, label, or category. All right. So if values are of a variable name, label, or category. All right. And for these ones, these values cannot be arranged. Okay, they can't be arranged in order to rank or order. So example, that's important to write down. Can't be arranged in accordance to value or rank. Okay. So some examples of a nominal level of measure would be like gender. You can't really rank male and female. They're two variables, but you can't rank them. And they have no number quality. Okay. They have a name and a label and a category, but I can't really rank them or arrange them in accordance to their value. Okay. So that's how we can look at a nominal level of measure for our variables. Then we're going to have ordinal level of measure. All right. So this is if a variable has properties of the nominal level. So if values have properties of the nominal level above of measure, nominal level of measure. But naming allows the values to be arranged. All right. So this is kind of like the nominal level of measure, which means it has values with names, labels, or category, except you're able to sit there and rank them or categorize them. Okay. An example of this would be like the grades that you get at school. You have A, B, C, D, E, and A being the highest and D being the lowest. You're able to sit there and rank them, and they are not of a numeric value. They are the value of a name, label, or category. Okay. So now let's look at interval level of measure. Okay. I like to think of this as like the third level. So this is going to be if variable has properties of the ordinal level of measure. And the differences value have meaning. And usually I like to think if the difference in value have meaning, difference in math usually means subtraction. But addition, I think, applies to this one as well, but we'll just put subtraction. So basically, on these variables, you can perform addition or subtraction, and it will have meaning, okay? So these are going to be numerical ones. Once you get into the interval level of measure, it's going to be more you're dealing with numbers, right? So an example of an interval level of measure could be like a range of people's heights. You can sit there and add to the height. You can subtract from somebody's height, okay? Now let's do this last one, ratio level of measure. For this one, if a variable has properties of interval, okay, if values have properties of interval level of measure, um, have interval level of measure and ratio of values, and the ratio of values of the ratio of values of the values having meaning. Meaning. Okay, let me explain that a little bit more. So this one has a value. It's so basically if you have a value of 0, it's going to be absent. But this one has to deal more with you're able to multiply or divide with your values. Okay, so remember a ratio is like a fraction. If I'm able to sit there and shrink it or make it grow, because that's what you do when you multiply or divide a value, a value by something. So you're able to apply like a ratio kind of thing to it, multiplication and division. The easiest way I like to think about these is interval level. You're able to subtract and add to your values. Ratio level is more of multiplication and division. Okay, and we're going to do more examples on these. If it's confusing, once we do the examples, it should clear it up. All right. So I think that's all I wanted to cover in the important part. So now let's go ahead and look at some examples. Let me zoom in on this one so we can sit there and focus on this one. This is example 1 in the book, and it's just going to sit there and talk about perimeter versus statistic. So remember from our definitions, okay? From our definitions, we already know what perimeter is. Perimeter is a numerical summary of a population, so all. And then a statistic is, where'd it go? And then a statistic is a numerical summary of a sample. Okay, so statistic is of a sample, and then parameter is of it all. All right. So let's look at back at example 1. Suppose 48% of all, okay, and I always like to sit there and annotate whenever I sit there and read statistic word problems, because then you can sit there and really zoom in and make sure you're doing the right thing. All right, so suppose 42%. So all, okay, that means it's going to be a parameter because I'm dealing with all of everything. All right, of students on your campus own a car. This value represents a parameter because it's a numerical summary of a population or all. So now let's look at this one. Suppose a sample of 100 students. So it already said it right here, sample. That's your keyword. Okay, if 100 students is obtained from this sample, we find that 46% own a car. So since we're taking a sample, that is going to be a statistic. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and look at example 2. Now, example 2 is in the book. I didn't copy and paste exactly what it reads out, so I'll read it out right now. For example 2, what they want us to do is look at table 1, and it represents a group of selected countries and information regarding these countries of July 2014. What they want us to do is identify the individuals, variables, and data in table 1, all right? So first, let's identify all the individuals, okay? So when we're given a data set like this, and oops, sorry. Individuals. Right. So remember, individuals are like our data, like our members of our population, or our data points of our data set. Okay. So for this one, our individuals are going to be, it's going to be our countries. All right. Because these are all our data points right here. Right. So countries is going to be our individuals. So we have Australia, Canada, France, Morocco, Poland, and so forth and so on. Those are all going to be my individuals, right? Next, they want us to sit there and identify our variables. So these are like the characteristics of my individuals that I'm measuring, okay? I'll do it in green. So how they have this one set up very nicely, okay? So we don't really have to sit there and hunt and see what our individuals are. But my variables are just going to be my characteristics of my data set, okay? My characteristics of my individuals. So the characteristics I'm looking about here, or my variables, are government type, life expectancy, and population, okay? Those are going to be all my variables of this table or my data set. Now they want to sit there and have us describe our variables, all right? So we're going to use some of the vocab words that we did in the beginning of this video, all right? So let's look at our first variable, government type. Government type, this is going to be a qualitative, right? Because we're not dealing with numbers, dealing with characteristics. So qualitative. I'll just put qual for now because I don't want to spend time writing it all out. So that's going to be a qualitative data type. Life expectancy. This is going to be a quantitative because I'm dealing with numbers, okay? Quantitative. Quant. Again, quant. I'll just put quant for now because I don't want to spell the whole thing out. And then our other variable, population in millions, this is going to be quantitative as well. Oops. Because it's dealing with numbers. Quant. Okay. All right, so we labeled those. Let's see what else they want us to say about them. Oh, we have to sit there and state if they're continuous or discrete. All right. So let's first look at life expectancy. So life expectancy kind of has, let's think about it. So as people age, it's not really expected, like when somebody could die, okay, with life expectancy. And you can sit there and have half ages, or somebody who's not born yet, or somebody, yeah, you can have half ages, or somebody who's close to turning 87, like 2 months away from turning 87, but hasn't turned 87 yet. So that means I'm not counting exact years, right? I can count in between my years as well. So for the quantitative variable of life expectancy, it's going to be continuous, okay? Because I can include my half ages. So I'll put continuous. I'll just continue. I'll just put that. We know what we mean. I'll just put C for continuous. Okay. So C for continuous. All right. Now let's look at population. For population, it can grow or it can get smaller. And again, it is a quantitative variable. Since I am able to sit there and count my population, okay, like I can give you an exact number of how many people are in a population. There's not going to be infinite number of people in a population, okay? So I'm able to count that. So this is going to be discrete. It's going to be a discrete variable. All right. And I believe that's all they wanted us to really notate about our individuals and our variables. Okay, so that's example 2. If you have more questions on example 2, leave a comment below and I can answer it. Last example we'll look at is example 3, distinguishing between qualitative and quantitative. We kind of just did this one up there. So I'll walk through these ones verbally. So the problem, determine whether the following variables are qualitative or quantitative, okay? Gender, this one is going to be qualitative, okay? And that's because basically, oh, we have to sit there and say, yeah, I think they only want us to say it, sit there and say if it's qualitative or quantitative. So this is going to be qualitative, okay? Because I'm not counting a number and you only have male and female, and it's a characteristic to be male or female. Your gender is a characteristic. Temperature, that's going to be quantitative because I can count the temperature. I'm dealing with numbers. That's going to be quantitative. Okay. Number of days during the past week that a college student studied. Again, that's going to be quantitative. Okay. Because I'm able to count those. They're numbers that I'm dealing with. And then we have zip code. Even though zip codes are numbers, they're actually characteristics of something. They describe where you live. Okay, so that's going to be qualitative. Okay. All right. Perfect. So that's all I'm going to cover for chapter 1. If you have any, or chapter 1, section 1.1, if you have any questions on chapter 1, section 1.1, leave a comment. On my next video, I'm going to sit there and do section 1.1 problems. So check into that video for more practice with the vocab words that we went over. Thank you, guys.